see if what happens with him. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. We have to start in Canada, and we're going to start with the new Liberal scandal, and then we'll go to Israel because there's lots going on with that. But first, new Liberal scandal. Yes, please. Larry Brock says, jaw-dropping. The Liberal NDP government just voted to shut down committee testimony from the Auditor General on the RCMP investigating contracts awarded under the $54 million ArriveCan app. They laugh in the face of an app that costs taxpayers $54 million that the RCMP is now investigating. So that's pretty wild. No gives a little bit more color on what happened after Brock and after Brock's testimony and the motion to adjourn, and I'll show you video of that in just a minute. No says Liberals and NDP MPs just voted to adjourn a committee meeting on ArriveCan with the Auditor General, who revealed not having been advised by the government about the investigation. Liberal MP Urquhart Khalid voted to adjourn just after CPC MP Larry Brock praised the Auditor General pressed the Auditor General for more details, and here is Larry Brock giving kind of a story on what happened, and then I'll show you what happened. I'll show you what happened first, I guess. This is what happened, and then Larry Brock fills in some details. Here we go.
But when you go deep dive into the particular story, it goes beyond misconduct. It goes into criminality. And that's why the RCMP is investigating it. There are allegations regarding identity theft, fraudulent, forged resumes, contractual theft, fraudulent billing, price fixing, collusion, all with senior bureaucrats with the Government of Canada and the three contractors in question, GC Strategies, Delian Enterprises, and Coridex. At the heart of the article,
Mr. Brockmer, that is your time, but you'll have another opportunity to pick that up again. Thank you. Ms. Khalid, you have the floor for 5 minutes now, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I'll start by thanking Ms. Hogan, our Auditor General, for her time today and for being so forthcoming with all of the questions. We realize it's a constant week, so at this time, Mr. Chair, I move that the committee do now adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn, right? Holy smoke. They're getting a little close to this whole thing. It's a motion to adjourn. And so that's what happened. Here's Larry Brock talking about this after the fact. Here we go.
You won't believe what the Liberal NDP coalition government just did. Breaking news. The Public Accounts Committee called an emergency meeting with the Auditor General of Canada to update Canadians on her audit into the $54 million ArriveCan app boondoggle. This meeting was called after we learned that the RCMP is now investigating criminality into contracts awarded under the ArriveCan app. The Liberal NDP government shut down the Auditor General's testimony after just 30 minutes of a scheduled 2-hour meeting. The evidence we heard was damning, and the coalition partners voted to cover it up and shut it down. We now know that the government officials lied before parliamentary hearings into the $54 million app. We have serious allegations of fraudulent contract practices that are a cause of grave concern. Today was the first step into a lengthy process to expose the corruption and find out how it is even possible for an app to cost taxpayers $54 million. This is the NDP Liberal government at its absolute worst. They laughed in the face of taxpayers being on the hook for $54 million. They laughed in the face of government officials lying before a committee investigation. And they laughed in the face of potential criminal contracting practices. It was a Conservative motion in the House of Commons that got the Auditor General to investigate the $54 million ArriveCan app. And we will not stop until all wrongdoing and abuse of taxpayer money is exposed. Now more than ever, it's clear the NDP Liberal government is simply not worth the cost.
So, I mean, that sounds pretty terrible and not very transparent, despite Justin Trudeau promising to be the most transparent government in Canadian history. Contrarian's responding to this. He says, this video should enrage every Canadian. Brock reveals all the fraud that went on with the ArriveCan app, and then the Liberal MP ends the meeting? How is this legal? How is any of this legal? Let's just fund Palestine some more. Yeah. No, says MP Brock just went over what the Globe has revealed about the ArriveCan contracting with the Auditor General. Immediately after, a Liberal MP asks to adjourn the meeting. NDP supported. So shut it down. Shut it down. Andy Lee found this out and started tweeting about this actually last year. This is December 24th. Merry Christmas Eve, everybody. 11:20 a.m. And she says, what were we getting for our taxpayer money out of this $16.8 million ArriveCan app contract with Dalian Cordiacs? 13 employees whose pay was redacted and remains unknown. Wow, right? That's a lucrative position right there. So RCMP are investigating. Don't you worry. They'll get to the bottom of this, just like they got to the bottom of the Nova Scotia shooter. You betcha, right? I'm sure Brenda Lucky's on the case. I know Brenda Lucky's gone, but her spirit remains. Let's talk about Israel. Spike says, as recently as 2020, the Israeli government was begging Arab governments to continue funding Hamas. Ask yourself why they do that. Ask yourself why the most secure border on earth fell to people on paragliders. Consider who this war benefits. Netanyahu, whose corruption scandals are now ignored. Hamas leadership, some of whom are billionaires that don't even live in Gaza. Yeah, that's an interesting kind of, like the guy who was the leader of Hamas was sitting in front of a green screen talking to Hamas from Qatar. So that's an interesting feature of this whole situation. And well, it's a lot more complicated than all of this, but that's strange, right? The US and the Western military industrial complex, who has a green light to fund a second proxy war. That's it, man. It's all about the Benjamins, baby. The US government who has now sidelined the anti-war right. And it used to be the right were the war hawks, right? The war hawk alt-right people, but now that's different. The war hawks, the George Bush righties, were the guys who got us into Iraq, right? Now they're anti-war far right. Those peaceniks, them. And all at the low, low cost of God knows how many innocent Israelis and Palestinians who will die. Please think, right? And so this is Mossad chief Yossi Chosen visited Doha on February 5th in order to ensure Qatar continues its financial aid policy to the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip. The visit came to light in an interview former Defense Minister Blah gave Israel's Channel 12 News on Saturday, saying Prime Minister Netanyahu had sent Cohen and the Israeli military's Chief of Southern Command, Herzl Halvi, to beg the Qataris to keep funneling money into Hamas, because that's part of their strategy. Ahmed Hassan says Canada is deeply concerned by the crisis in Israel and Gaza and its toll on civilians. We are providing an initial $10 million in aid for the civilians affected by this conflict. Let us be clear, no Canadian aid will be going to Hamas. And Jerry says, Hamas is the government in Palestine. So it would be like somebody saying, we are funding Canadians in their struggle for whatever it is. None of the money we're sending to the Canadians is getting into the hands of the Canadian government, but we're sending it via Canada Post, and the government is opening that mail. So they might get some of it. It's very interesting. We can't get an airplane to get the people out of Israel organized, but we're going to send money to Palestine right now after everybody else said they couldn't do that without funding Hamas. Canada's going to make sure. How? Are you going to have people on the ground? Really? Do you think? They're going to go into the war zone right now? They're going to go into the Gaza Strip right now and start giving out medical aid? That's what our $10 million is going for? I don't believe that. Not even a little tiny bit. Also, it's funny that they include Israel. Here's Justin Trudeau. He says, he's responding to Ahmed Hassan's tweet. He says, we've announced an initial $10 million in humanitarian assistance to address urgent needs stemming from the crisis in Israel, West Bank, and the Gaza Strip. This will help trusted partners. They won't have boots on the ground. They have trusted partners on the ground. Provide food, water, emergency medical assistance, protection services, and more. The food, I don't know. Probably there's no trucks making deliveries to the grocery stores in the Gaza Strip right now. There's no electricity. They're doing airstrikes. There's no water turned on. I saw a video, and I don't have the video because I thought it was a little gauche and I didn't want to show it, but I'll describe it to you. There's an Israeli guy who was just taking videos of him having electricity and water, like running water and electricity, and he was saying, "Take that, Palestinians! You don't even have these luxuries." Like, ha ha ha. And I thought, again, gauche, right? But we're sending money. Like, the Israelis have turned off the water and the power in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip in order to facilitate, I don't know, getting people to evacuate. But Egypt was asked to take people who wanted to leave from the West Bank and Gaza Strip, and they said no. And I think Egypt is, I said Egypt, right? Not Israel? Egypt, I meant to say, if I didn't say that. Egypt was asked, they said no. And so they can't, the people who are in there, they're in a controlled area with borders. They can't leave, or they don't have freedom of movement. They have to have approvals and things like that to go. And so it's interesting that they're behaving in this way, and we're sending money to give to trusted partners in the region, but definitely not Hamas. Okay. He says, yeah, like, and I just practically, which food, how many tons of food are you sending? How is it going to be delivered? When is it going to be delivered? Like, what's the timeline for this? Water, how many tons of water are you sending? Emergency medical assistance specifically, right? For the airstrikes that Israel is pounding in the Gaza Strip right now? Or are you just helping Israelis with the emergency medical assistance? Protection services? Protection from what? Be specific. What's the plan specifically? Right? Do we have a plan? It doesn't seem like there's actually a plan. It just sounds like it's nice words. Here's Justin Trudeau talking about the same thing. Fundamentally, remember what I started this segment with, that Hamas is the government of Palestine right now. Justin Trudeau, Netanyahu, all of these people are reimagining the government of Palestine as a separate entity. I agree that there are three groups of people here. There's Hamas, and Hamas are terrorists who committed an atrocity. There's Palestinians, and there's Israelis. And the Israelis, they were the victims of this attack. If you believe that they didn't have a hand in it, and if you believe that their government didn't look the other way and didn't mobilize any kind of troops or anything like that, it looks suspicious to me. But the most militarized border in the world, the most watched border in the world, and Hamas is allowed to cross with tractors and paragliders, and there's no military response. I have a huge amount of questions. I have a huge amount of questions about it, honestly. But they're trying to dehumanize these people. They're trying to make it seem like these people are terrorists, that there's a difference between Hamas and the Palestinians, and that this government, who couldn't tell the difference between high school students and real people who might have needed curb during the lockdowns, during their disastrous banking spending spree that they did, the money printing that they did, they couldn't figure that out. So, but with this money, with this $10 million, they know because of trusted partners in the region. I don't believe it. I don't believe them. I don't believe they have a real plan. It seems like we're just funding terror for no reason other than to watch the red ants and the black ants fight after we're shaking the jar with our money. Here's Justin Trudeau confirming we're not sending money to terrorists, and leaving out the point that the terrorists are the government in Palestine. Here we go.
Accordance with international law. Hamas is a terrorist organization, and it does not represent the Palestinian people or the legitimate aspirations of the Palestinian people, and it does not represent Arabs or Muslims. Israeli and Palestinian civilians deserve to live in peace, in security, in dignity, and with their human rights respected. Canada will be providing an initial $10 million in humanitarian assistance to address urgent needs in Israel and in the Gaza Strip, and Minister Hussen will have more details soon. As events abroad unfold, I want to take a moment.
I'll just leave it there. Just having Justin Trudeau say something doesn't make it true. So he can't say Hamas is not a legitimate government, because at this point in time, is there a way internationally? I mean, they tried to remove the government of Venezuela and put their own government in, the G7, the United Nations. That didn't work, right? Like, it's not going to work. So just making that statement is not going to make it true, especially because we're Canada and we just don't have that kind of clout. So Justin Trudeau reimagining what this is just to justify it to Canadian citizens. And I think that it's incorrect. I think his statement that they don't represent these people in certain ways is incorrect. And I mean, those people should make that decision. How can they make that decision? I don't know. I have no idea. But it seems like on one side, we've got judge, jury, and executioner saying Hamas did this, and no real way to. I don't even. Hamas is saying that yes, we did this, but Hamas was created by Israel. So the whole pretext for destroying the Gaza Strip is an entity funded by Israel and the West commits a terrorist act in Israel, and then runs back to the West Bank, and then now we can commit atrocities. It seems way too convenient to me. Do you believe in coincidences, right? So it seems like Justin Trudeau's version of reality is the version of reality that we're all supposed to get on board with. And this is how things are. They're a terrorist group. We're going to kill them all. And that's that. And if some innocent lives get, caught in the crossfire, well, you got to break a couple of eggs to make an omelet or whatever, right? Like I feel like we're approaching this completely in the wrong direction. Really, honestly. Rex Glacier is making the point that I was making because I read this tweet before I did the show. So he says, you can't figure out how guns are being smuggled into Canada, but somehow you can outsmart Hamas, who uses aid money for the evil actions. You're just lying, and all you do and you and your government do is lie. And right, so there are people who I guess made the argument underneath here talking about how you couldn't keep track of curb, you couldn't do this, you couldn't do that. How are we going to be keeping track of any of this money going into Israel, into Hamas-controlled territory, Palestine, the West Bank, Gaza, and all the rest? How are we going to do that practically, from a practical standpoint? And the practical standpoint is that's a racist question. Next question. I'm not addressing that question. Next question. They don't have a plan. If they did have a plan, they might tell us, but maybe they wouldn't either. Here is Benjamin Netanyahu talking about no country should have contact with Hamas, and those who do should be subject to sanctions. So this is echoes of Zelensky, echoes of, these Russians are bad, and we've always been at war with Russia. We have to continue war with Russia, so on and so forth. This is the latest incarnation. Here's Netanyahu.
Will Hamas be crushed? And Hamas should be treated exactly the way ISIS was treated. They should be spit out from the community of nations. No leader should meet them. No country should harbor them. And those that do should be sanctioned. Tony, my friend, will Hamas be crushed?
So what's the standing for sending money to the West Bank, but not Hamas? But Hamas is in control of the West Bank and Gaza. But we're not sending money to them. We're sending money to our trusted partners to deliver humanitarian aid before or after the land invasion, right? Before or after. Well, I'll tell you what their plan is. I'll show you. Melanie Jolie. Actually, I'll show you now because it's kind of relevant. Hold on, let me find it. Yeah, okay. Israel appears to have shifted their plan of attack for invading Gaza. Rather than sending troops in now and fighting an extremely bloody war with an enemy who knows the territory better, they plan to starve Hamas out first in Gaza. Hamas predicted incorrectly that Israeli forces would not be willing to go down this route due to enormous toll on innocent human life. There's nowhere to run for the people of Gaza, who have been days now without food, water, internet, gas, electricity, and medical care. Egypt, the only other country bordering Gaza, is refusing to accept migrants or open its border in pretty much any way. After Hamas, almost every resident in Gaza runs out of the last reserves and becomes weak, tired. This is when Israel will strike and attempt to eradicate Hamas. By that time, it's possible hundreds of thousands of civilians or more will be dead. I don't know if that's a realistic estimate. I don't know. I honestly don't know if that's part of the plan, if people would just stand by and allow that to happen, et cetera, et cetera. But this appears to be operationally, where they would want to go in. Back to this. I'll do my best to keep you updated in real time as these events unfold. Video shows Gaza resident fleeing for cover as Israeli airstrike lands nearby. And again, I can't confirm these videos, so we have to take people's word for it, but it's interesting. So how does Netanyahu saying you cannot support Hamas at all? How does Canada sending $10 million into a place that sounds like that make any sense, right? If Israel's goal is to starve out the Gaza Strip. They're under siege, basically. They can't leave, nothing in or out, no electricity, no food, no water, no anything like that. So unless you're set up to withstand something like that, things are going to get bad pretty quickly. People are going to get hungry, and then they're going to get, well, desperate, right? And so is Canada sending $10 million worth of aid? Does that make any freaking sense if that's really the plan? It seems crazy. So what's the plan, Canada? Seems insane, right? It seems like they're not listening to anybody and they're just going to keep funding Hamas or whatever, right? And again, if Bibi says any country who meets with them or any country who trades with them or gives them support should be cast out, not meet with anybody. I mean, already Canada's being ignored, right, on the world stage. Already Canada's being communications are being written by the White House for G5 countries and not including Canada or Japan. So what does that say, right? Japan's economy is kind of yikes right now, but I don't know what that means, right? But it's not good. It doesn't mean good things. It doesn't mean they're so good we should not have them in our communique. That doesn't usually those two things don't usually happen. Melanie Jolie's talking about flights, and she said, and Justin Trudeau was talking about flights during his little speech there, but I can't stand listening to Justin Trudeau, so we'll just do it via tweet here. She says, the first CAF plane carrying Canadians and their loved ones has departed Tel Aviv. Thank you for the team at our emergency watch and response center for making this happen and for your work in supporting Canadians in the region. If you need help, call this number. And it's an Ottawa number. It's a 613 number. I think it's an Ottawa number. Is 613 the area code in Israel? I don't know. Robin Minotti shares this. He says, who lives in Gaza? 1 million children, according to the Washington Post. The population is extraordinarily young. UNICEF has estimated that there are roughly 1 million children living in the Gaza Strip, meaning that almost half the children there, or half the people there, are children. So I guess if you are in the Gaza Strip, you've got to go to one side, go to the side that's not being bombed right now while we bomb the other side. And then if you're strong enough and stuff, go back to the side and maybe hope your house didn't get bombed, right? Because warning, we're going to bomb you and we're going to remove Hamas, who is your government. So look for the aid packages to be released, but don't give them to Hamas because then that's bad, right? Very, very interesting stuff. Truth Media says, note mainstream media word choice here. When terrorists attack, you are killed. When a government bombs you repeatedly, you just die. BBC News says more than 500 people have died in Gaza after Israel launches massive retaliatory attacks, according to Gaza's health ministry. More than 700 people have been killed in Israel since Hamas launched its attacks on Saturday. All the latest. So it's blatant right there. Those are the same. That's the same tweet. So. Here's the definition of kill and die. Kill is cause of death of a person or other living thing, put an end to or cause the failure or defeat of something. Die is stop living, to use to emphasize that one wants to do or have something very much. Die. So very interesting language use. It is meant to manipulate. Ferryman's Toll says Israel issues the demand that all Palestinians leave northern Gaza in 24 hours. This is impossible. Israel knows this is impossible. Israel then kills everyone and says, well, we told them to leave, as justification for their actions. And he continues, but I'm just going to not say it because you can read it if you want to. He's not very happy with Israel for their choice of putting people in a position like that. I can understand it. I just read that Egypt was asked and they said no. Globe and Mail is reporting Israeli evacuation order in northern Gaza will cause chaos and calamity, humanitarian workers say. That's not surprising, I guess. Here's Benny says Israel tells the United Nations to evacuate the northern Gaza Strip within 24 hours. IDF notified the United Nations to evacuate its staff and notify Palestinians living north of the Wadi Gaza that they should evacuate to the southern part of the Gaza Strip. So in that situation, there is, there you go. You can't leave, so just go north or south, right? And I think that's scary. That would be scary, I think. You have to wonder how you got yourself into that situation. Half the residents there are children. How are you raising a family there? Is that part of the ideology? Are you going there to plant roots, to plant, you know what I mean, to make sure that you don't lose the territory? I don't know what the motivation is. Somebody sent me a documentary, and I have yet to watch that documentary. I watched another one that was a banger that I think it's on here. I think it's on here. If it's not on here, I'll show you where it is right now. It's right here. This one, 1,000 years. Holy cow! It's wild. If you're interested, check it out. It's a very interesting situation. But the idea that you cannot grow your family in a secure way causes instability, causes disruption, causes people to fight and say, like, we're not free, we want to be free. And I think the core of that is having opportunity for your kids to have a great life and raise their kids. You know what I mean? So it's pretty wild. D.D. Denslow says, you are being conditioned to accept genocide. So choosing to raise a family in the Gaza Strip seems antithetical to how most parents would plan their future. So I'm wondering if there's some ideology that drives them to do that. So I'll have to watch the documentary to see if it addresses that. Sorry, sometimes where I'm going, I think I've made my point and I haven't, so apologies about that. Denslow says, you're being conditioned to accept genocide. So we told them to leave. Why don't they leave? Well, they don't leave because they can't leave. Is genociding, is bombing innocent people, half of which are kids. If the population of Gaza is 2 million people and 1 million of them are children, is it a rational response to say we have to destroy this place? If you remove power from hospitals in an area, that means you can't do surgeries. That means you can't, help people who are maybe injured. If you're bombing places, that's going to injure people. Are these the actions of a enlightened, forward-thinking group of people who are defending themselves in the face of a horrific terrorist attack? I struggle to accept that this is the right way to do it. On the other side of it, though, terrorists backed by the United States, so it's very, very similar, bombed the World Trade Centers, and those buildings fell down, and the United States went to war for years because of that, and invaded a country, destroyed the country. Nobody was ever held accountable. Nobody ever really said sorry. Nobody, we got it wrong. Nothing, right? It was unbelievable. So, we are conditioned to accept genocide. We are conditioned to cheer on this war because we think it's virtuous. We think it's positive. We think it's going to help keep the West safe. If anything, it will make the West less safe. Yesterday, I told you that J News or something like that, the Jerusalem Times, J Times, was reporting that they had indeed seen the pictures, and yes, babies had been decapitated. And then I heard that was AI, that it was AI generated images, and it wasn't actually real. And now I found this yesterday in the afternoon. White House walks back Biden's claim he saw children beheaded by Hamas. Yeah. Yep. A White House spokesman later clarified that U.S. officials and the president had not seen pictures or confirmed such reports independently. So it was the rap smear. Somebody leaked it. It was reported. The president said, I can't believe that's real. And somebody said, the president says he's seen dead babies. And bingo, bango, bongo, you've got a rap smear. You've got a completely fabricated event. So I still have yet to see viable evidence that it actually happened, and people are still talking about it. The reason that I think that they talk about it, I said yesterday, because it hit, but I want to explain what that means. If you have something that goes viral, you do more of it. Like if you have a YouTube video that hits, goes viral, then you do more of it. So if this baby thing is selling newspapers, this baby thing is selling this war, you do more of it. This is Wag the dog, right? This baby thing is the mascot. It's the shoe, right? If you've watched Wag the dog, this baby thing is one of the selling features of this war. Those people are animals, and they did these horrible things to babies, just like the Iraqi soldiers did in 1993, right? Horrific things that ended up not being true in 1993 and ended up very quickly, again, not being true now. But this is working to get people on board with glassing the Gaza Strip or bombing it or saying get out when they know they can't get out, right? Like all of this, and people are on board with it. If they're not on board with it, they're so numb to it that, okay, right? Not understanding that doing this is going to cause more conflict and more division and more response. This is not going to calm things down. It's not helpful, but here we are, right? And what's happening is Toronto Sun is reporting this. Toronto police are prepared for the potential of terror called for on Friday the 13th. So the Hamas leaders called for a jihad on Friday the 13th. So Toronto police are upping their enforcement. Montreal is the same thing. Hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to canadapoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.